Welcome to Stones of Creation. Today we're going to be going over the races. So let us make a new thing, new layer, and make it white. So we're going to be going over another one of the main races of the world. And this time, we will be going over seem to have lost the races. Here they are. We'll be going over the spider creatures and sloth. So now, how do the spider creatures work? Let's describe them as a mostly flat disc, tapered on one end and a little bulbous on the other, so they're not entirely flat. So they look on the front. They have with a split in its shell along here. Instead of having eyes, it'll have a sensory network of just things. So a big black thing here, which functions kind of like a mix of compound eyes and light-sensitive cells. So they kind of see constantly all around them. Then they have their sets of legs off here. One leg, with the largest and most powerful legs in the back. And the front legs getting smaller until you eventually get to a small set of two little manipulator legs. They'll have two or three little fingers, small open and closed fingers, not quite as flexible as human fingers, on each of these small hands, and they'll have 4 of them, allowing them limited manipulation. Though their front 4 legs will all have this configuration. These ones are a lot less nimble than those front ones, giving them a kind of set of full legs, full arms, mixed legs and arms. These will have something kind of similar, but degraded to the point of not being used, where the 3 points are only used for balance, similar to how human toes work. So now we're left with these guys. And what other interesting thing we have about them? At the front, they have the mouth, perhaps jaws, and their jaws associated with the mouth, but they can also spit out a material, less like silk of a proper spider, and more like the kind of waxy mud of a termite. Who use this to build their nests. And they'll make little huts. These huts will serve as both a protection as shelter, but also as a warm and damp place for them to rest in inclement weather. They generally survive as hoarders, gathering large amounts of resources to support over the support themselves over a bad winter. And why they do create structures when it's not times of inclement weather, they generally produce smaller open-top structures and just nest there short periods of time before moving on. Though ancient nesting areas can have very complex of these open tops. Their main way of feeding is based on rivers. They'll use their natural things to produce dams on more permanent settlements, and then gather the fish that are unable to properly get over the dam and that kill themselves in the dam and the edge of the dam, and eat those, just having one or two of them of the tribes to station there to collect. In more temporary shelters, when they don't have such abilities, they prefer to create simple or complex traps, such as pits and trapdoors that allow them to come out and attack things, preferring non-active methods of hunting, as well as light foraging. Primarily preferring meats, though they will subsist on vegetables and natural fibers. They are limited in the processes of them and will experience negative health effects if they're not able to gather enough. And so, these are the Zerks. Now, Zerk culture can, like any other race's culture, can vary from tribe to tribe. However, they generally value the aged ones, and so the most elderly of the tribes are viewed in high regard. Though they do appreciate those that bring in necessary skills, as any tribe would. And so they're left with complex social hierarchies around both groups, the elderly and the knowledgeable, though there is some overlap in there. Zerks may also have antennas. I'm not sure about them having antennas, but if they have antennas, it would be for setting... No, they wouldn't have antennas, but their legs can sense vibrations in the ground, allowing them a sense of things, especially the harder ground of their nesting material. Now, they'll use this nesting material on softer, sandier soils to produce their temporary nesting sites when the environment would otherwise prevent it. And they will go into their structures to avoid predators. Thus, even in temporary sites, there will be some communal larger structures whose sole purpose is to house as many Zerks as possible, so they can all run in there when hostiles come, even if they do have their open top nests. Now, the Zerks will produce eggs, and the females will not necessarily know who's fathered it, and so the eggs are then taken and raised communally, generally by the eldest female, the grandmother. This grandmother is not any larger or more biologically adept at raising children, but rather just the eldest female, and because of the children raising generally is viewed as a feminine pursuit by the Zerks, the most raised in feminine. Below her will be the youngest females, which will serve as hand mothers to the grandmother, and they will And some of them are nymph females, but most of them are adult females, though the nymph females will be brought into here. Now, what is a feminine? As I mentioned it, they do have recognition of things like feminine pursuits in the culture. Now, what makes a feminine pursuit and what makes a masculine pursuit? Well, activities that are generally as child rearing is a feminine pursuit, so generally homemaking will be a feminine pursuit. As such, females will be associated with protecting the home and building the homes. Now, this also leads to them doing other home and structure-related things, such as hunting. Hunting is a feminine pursuit for the Zerk. Tending to children. As well as governance, as much it is. While masculine pursuits will be those that are associated with leaving the home, going out and about. Generally, this means that in Zerk culture, males are viewed as less important. It will be a greater loss to the tribe to lose one of their important structure building, tending females than it will to lose one of the males. Though they do consider their own lives to be at least somewhat precious and will not appreciate losing males either. So males have the job of foraging, where they will go out far from the tribe. They'll also have the job of scouting, looking ahead of the tribe to find locations, as well as any sort of conflict, but particularly external conflict, the aggressive part of the conflicts, while women have the internal parts of the conflicts, the defensive war angle. Finally, scouts will be dutied with gathering materials, if any are needed, which is generally in the foraging, but this will also lead to them in the more established long-term groups into mining and other manual labor things. So quarrying will generally be a masculine pursuit. Now, their diet consists mainly of meats, as well as of vegetables, as well as of greens, though they will also eat rocks and stones. I don't know how to make the meat stone look. That's now meat. But yes, so they'll eat small amounts of stone. Generally, they'll eat only sedimentary stone, but also dirt and muds, and this is used partially to make their spit, resulting in their spit having a small amount of material, having, in addition to the biological component, a grit material, resulting in an almost natural concrete material. This means that Zerks are viewed very important to other long-standing cults, as their cities and other races, as their useful natural building material means that they're natural builders, and that other cultures will use Zerks when possible to construct their buildings, especially if they don't have their own natural solution to buildings. Though this is a lot less affected by nomadic tribes of individuals. Zerks like to settle, and they'll stay in a location a lot longer than other races. Generally, they'll only move when their prey of choice is low, or inclement weather that they are unprepared for is incoming. If they aren't able to produce a not large enough storage for inclement weather, they will leave. But also, if the inclement weather will completely wipe out their food source, and they're left without food. They generally prefer to leave prior to inclement weather than before, having a complicated system of scouts to examine regions ahead of them, and so even if caught relatively off guard, they'll generally have one or two locations for a new nest if their old one is raided or flooded or any other negative thing that could happen to them. And as such, it's very hard to wipe out a Zulk nest, as they are very liable to, well, return to the way they were. Sorry, I brought up the wrong thing. Boop. Okay, there we go. Now, they are similar in some ways to, though I'm sure they'll be similar in some ways to other races, but now, why are they sloth? This is less so than the pride of the things, but generally they don't like to actively do things that are intense. They prefer to make things that they prefer to put as little energy into actions as possible, and therefore are not the most creative or outgoing of races. They'll generally prepare something and then wait, rather than going out and acting in the moment. This can lead to Zerks being easy to overwhelm when they are not allowed to produce a plan when they're caught off guard. Now, let's talk about the two stages of Nymph of Zerk life. The Zerk life cycle goes egg, which is laid by adult females, to nymphs, which are smaller Zerks with all of their legs roughly the same size, and with full mobility in every single one of their feet, in every single one of their digits. However, they then molt several times, gaining both their eye slit, which the nymphs do not have, as well as their front limbs do not grow as much as their middle limbs, which don't grow as much as their large limbs, though the larger growing limbs do lose mobility in their digits. This results in younglings being more nimble and manipulative than the adults. The adults then lay the eggs. The eggs of the thing are light and unshelled, similar to frog eggs, and are laid in batches, between 10 to 20, though they generally only lay once a year. And it is likely that not a large number will live past youth, though the large spawning size does result in a relatively large number of Zulks over the entire species, over the entire world. However, their complex social nature does mean that they are limited to nests and generally are not found wandering alone. Generally, these nests, the nests of the Zulks that are not permanent settlements, city nests as they were, can be up to between 100 and 500 in number. This is a relatively stable family unit with 3 to 4 generations living in it. Now, generally mates will be of males off from the nest, and there'll be external males that have entered the nest for various reasons, both for communications between nests and their various solutions. External males are welcomed generally into the nest to mate, while internal males are generally not allowed to mate within the nests. When males mate into the nests, they generally do not stay for too long. As such, males that are mated with other nests will generally return to their own nests. This is not always the case. In some environments and scenarios, it is possible that the males cannot reliably return to their nests of birth, and so will join the new nests. These adoptive males are treated as the males of the nests, though they will be father to large numbers of the population, as they are external, and Zulks can smell unique pheromones that are associated with a given nest line. As such, nest lines generally don't even breed with other close nest lines when nests split. So the nests that are closely related generally aren't things. Splitting nests happens when the nest gets too large or disaster or calamity breaks them apart, and you have two groups of mateable females that are no longer together. When the nest gets too large, this generally happens of small groups of up to 50 females leaving the nest to go off and find their own. This will generally be done most in places where there's very good environment, though it will also not be. Generally, they'll be sent off to one of the known new nest sites, and will be viewed as relatively appreciated by the old nests. Zooks generally don't get into wars, as while they do control large amounts of territories with their nests and their associated trapping grounds, they don't generally view war as worthwhile to their processes, though they will aggressively defend their own nests, and they will attack if they view it as necessary to the survival of the nest. They won't generally attack for other reasons, though they can be provoked into it, and it's not unheard of. And this has been the Zooks, one of the races of Nulk and the Stones of Creation. Have a very nice day.